the hand's the oldest literature in the world. Before we had books or before we had rocks to like carve little messages in, probably we were all trying to figure out what the lines were on our hands.
Welcome
to another episode
of
As
Woo As
As You Want.
As You Want. There's a bit of delay, everyone. Welcome, everyone.
It's just par for the course with 2021. Just
yes,
so fun, so relaxing.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of 2021 As You Want edition. We made it through 2020. We're so happy you're all here. And we're very excited because today we have a really wonderful, amazing, intelligent, fascinating guest, the one and only Jena Griffiths. So, Celine, why don't you take it away and let us know how we got in touch with Jena?
Yeah, of course. So I was gifted a very cool thing from a family friend, which was a 30-minute hand analysis with Jena. And I had that done, and it was really mind-blowing and like nothing I'd ever heard before, and insightful, and I was obsessed. And I told everybody about it. And then Jared and I were just talking about who we could have on the pod, running some ideas. And I said, oh, Jena, that would be amazing. So I reached out, and she graciously said yes, and here we are. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Other side of the pond.
Yeah, the other side of the pond. Mm-hmm. Zurich. No.
Yes.
Yeah, near Zurich, up in the hills near Zurich.
Near Zurich. Okay. Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
So do you want to just tell us a little bit about how you discovered and learned so much about hand analysis?
Yeah, sure. I was interested in palmistry as a kid, a teenager, and then I'd study all the hands of people in class at school and things like that.
Oh, wow.
And then I went to university and studied psychology and chucked palmistry out the window.
Right.
And then later, I decided not to become a psychologist because I thought, well, they're all lost. I know they're not, but that was my feeling at the time. I felt that I needed to go out and study more, go and experience the world more and grow as a person before I went back into that field. It's still, psychology is my deepest love. And I went and did all sorts of other things. I got other degrees in climate change, geography and social anthropology. And I really spent a lot of time questioning, why am I here? What am I doing? And
it sounds very familiar.
Yeah, and I think that is the case for everybody. And
it is, huh? Is that what you find when you do readings?
People do. I think even when you're 80 or 90,
wow,
you're still pondering that question.
Wow.
And so I ended up in advertising and was doing really well. And I decided eventually that I wasn't on the planet to sell more cars or more beer. And so I went to walkabout, and I took a sabbatical and went sailing and never came back, basically.
Oh my
gosh. And I eventually met a Swiss guy on the other side in Fiji. And we sailed together I was sailing on one boat, he was on another, and eventually we ended up sailing together, and we had a child in Thailand, and we sailed until my son was 3.
Wow.
And that was 20 years ago. No, it was 19 years ago.
Wow.
So, yeah. And then I came to Switzerland, and I decided I'd become a teacher. And somebody said, "Oh, there's this guy that comes here from from California once or twice a year, and you've really got to check him out. And he can tell you the most amazing things from your palms." And I said, "No, I've done that, been there, not interested." I know, you've read that.
Classic.
You really got to check this out. And then I did. And what was interesting was it was a group, and I knew a lot of the people in the group. And so this was Richard Unger, who is originally from your region, I think even Brooklyn.
Oh, really? Okay.
And now so perhaps you've got to have him at some point too.
Imagine.
If you want to do the intro, we'd be more than happy to.
Yeah. And and I watched him give other people sessions, and I knew the people. And I was quite impressed because of what he'd told each person.
Did you go into that session skeptical? I mean, you said as a child you were interested in reading palms. So
yeah,
how open were you?
I was kind of coming from an analytical mind, and well, let's see what this is about. Stuff like that. And then I was quite gobsmacked, and then I thought, but maybe it's just showmanship. And then I went and had a full session, and I was really impressed. It was like 10 years of therapy in 1 hour. And he was able to tell me what my purpose was, and it fitted exactly. He told me what my life lesson was, and it is like my core issue. And
wow.
that's what I find one of the most fantastic things about the system is you can get right to the point. And so I
expect a call from me soon, Jena.
Yeah, and I thought, wow, I've got to. Yes.
10 years of therapy. That sounds great.
I will tell you that it was very much like that when we spoke.
Wow.
Yeah, and we were only on the phone for 20 minutes or half an hour, I think.
I know. I was,
Yeah, you don't need to do but then again, it's a diagnostic tool.
Right.
Then probably you need someone to walk the distance with you.
Gotcha. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I just thought, wow, I've got to learn how to do this. And then just so happened, I live really out in the middle of nowhere. I live on a hilltop, really, as Richard, the guy that I learned, Richard Unger, he says, I live in the North Pole. But anyway, it just so happened that a psychologist near here decided to invite him she wanted to learn the system. So she invited him to do a year-long, and then later an advanced year-long, and then later a master's, all on my doorstep in the middle of nowhere.
You mean they came to your house?
Yeah, they came to 10 minutes from where I live.
Wow.
So people were flying in from all over the place, and I had it delivered right to my door. So
that's pretty epic.
It's amazing how the universe arranged it like
that.
Wow.
So cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What was the teacher's name?
Richard Unger. He lives in California.
Mm-hmm. Richard Unger. Okay.
Richard Unger, right. And then I realized that there was a lot of information that he knew that he wasn't in his material. And so I interviewed him every week for 6 years to kind of like download that for hand analysts all around the world, get that information out. And there's some places where we've kind of gone in slightly different directions. He's the basis of all my work. His analysis of fingerprints, and so he is kind of like the genius behind modern palm reading. Okay, you could say. Okay, and he actually comes from your area.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. He was originally from that area, but moved away. But that's where his family is originally from, where you are. So the thing is that the difference between normal palm reading and hand analysis, the life purpose hand analysis, is you divide everything into two different maps. So your hand's like a map, and you've got two maps. One map is the fingerprints, and Richard talks life purpose, life lesson. But you can also you can apply it, you can think of it in terms of neuroscience if you want to, or an energetic map. That's the way I think about it, like frequency. And it's an energetic map in a world of multiple frequencies. That's the way I like to think about it. Okay.
In each palm.
Yeah. So you're looking
right and the left.
You're looking at the 10 fingerprints, and so that's one map that doesn't change. And you can think of that as, some people talk about it in terms of karma, and some people talk about it as soul psychology. That's visible in your fingerprints, because your fingerprints, it's like an energetic imprint that you leave on the body as the body's forming.
Okay.
And then there's another map that most of the palmists look at, and that's the shape of your hand and the various line formations.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay. And people used to do, or some people still do, prediction with that, and there are hundreds of thousands of different systems. You've got Chinese systems, you've got different systems from India, you've got people from all over doing all sorts of different things related to what the lines mean. But now the interesting thing about the lines is that if you get electric shock treatment, all the lines change, they get frazzled. So
really,
because the human body we're an electric system. We've got this huge, an electric field around us, that and the energy comes in through the one hand, and out through the other. It comes in through the top of your head and all of that. But we are electric that then gets converted to chemical,
right?
And the whole medical model is changing rapidly at the moment, because the medical model has been chemical up to now, and now it's starting to also go electrical.
Huh.
So sound, for example, can really impact and change us radically. But now the interesting thing is, if you could just visualize that you could take a time exposure of the neurons firing, I think what happens is the more you have a repetitive thought, the more likely you're likely to grow certain lines in your hand.
Like a neural pathway expressed on your hand. That's bonkers bananas, and I love this. So
it's like, because you can often see, if you think of the lines running up towards the fingers like positive energy, where you put in your focus, where you put in your energy, and that can even influence the length of your fingers and the fatness of the various zones of the fingers. So that's the one thing. And then the tiny little horizontal lines, not the three major lines, but the horizontal lines going across the palm and across the fingers. Mm-hmm. Kind of like, what am I saying no to? So what am I saying yes to, and what am I saying no to?
Huh.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then think of your hands as real estate. The locations are very specific. And you can think of it, the old palmists had it quite, they were quite accurately recorded, for example, the index fingers as Jupiter energy or Zeus. Okay, Jupiter, he was the king of the gods. Mm-hmm. If you think, so you can take it back to, and this is instead of going astrology, you can go that way, but Richard didn't, because Richard had a degree in classical literature. And so he read all the ancient mythology and stuff like that, the old things like that. And that was the breakthrough for hands, because the whole thing was to take it back to that mythology and work with the mythology. Okay.
Yes.
So all the lines, or the shapes of the fingers, or everything under, say, the index fingers, are all related to issues related to Jupiter. So issues of power, like what do you do with your index finger when you point?
Oh,
yes,
you
absolutely.
point. Yeah.
Or when you go like this, come here.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. It's or your trigger finger.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the length of it, the shape of it, the whether they're like little cross hatchings and where they are all relate, or whether they are lines that go, like a line that grows up towards that finger from lower down in the palm is called an ambition line.
Oh,
okay.
Celine, you're looking.
Yeah, I was like, I think.
And yeah, so, or you might have a star under that finger, which is to do with leadership and to do with needing to find your throne and sit on it, instead of being the power behind someone else's throne. So it works like that. And then sometimes there are lines that go from the area just above the thumb, which is called the Marzon, who is the king of the god of war. Okay, so this is to do with courage and testosterone and warring. Okay, and those lines go out to whatever's under attack. So it's your thinking. If you are telling yourself a negative story about your partnership or lack thereof, you'll actually grow a line that goes all the way from that zone across to the point of intimacy on your heart line.
Wow.
Oh, boy.
And if you are telling yourself stories about what are other people going to think, and et cetera, then it'll grow a line to that region under the ring finger, which was all about Apollo, which is about being seen. He was the favorite son. And he was also the god of creativity and stuff like that. So it's very, very precise, and where these lines end, where they start, or where they break, all relate to the mythology of the fingers, for example. The mythology of those gods. So it's very precise and very accurate, and it's astonishing. It's really astonishing how precise it can be, and what it's really. I think it's the psychology of the future. And the beauty of it, compared to if you take all the various psychographic tests that you can take. They actually mix soul psychology and personality psychology into one. And
like the ink, you mean the tests you take of like where they show you an ink blot and they're like, what do you see?
Yeah, all these various different psychographic tests that you can take. And if you go in for a job or in things like that. But here you've got for personality tests. Okay. But Richard had the wisdom to separate the two. The shape of the hand and the line formations is the personality, and then the fingerprints, and that can change. That changes over time. That's where you put in your energy focus. What negative stories are you telling yourself? Okay, what talents have you got that you might not even be using? But the hand is almost like the hand's like a poem telling you, hey, you've got this. Why don't you use it?
Oh, wow.
Okay. Okay. So, or, oops, you're not taking care enough about yourself, or not have, whatever it is. I mean, the hand gives a lot of that sort of information. But then that's the palm reading side of it, you can say. Okay. But then there are the fingerprints. Okay, and Richard wrote a book called Life Prints, okay, which is about the fingerprints and how to decode all the basics of how to tell the difference. So what you're doing there, you're also working with the mythology, but you are you're looking at where is the pattern intensity the highest and where is there less energy in terms of pattern intensity. So some fingerprints have got hardly any energy. They're just like a gentle wave. And that's like, there's less energy on those fingers. And where is the pattern very intense? And that's so we're looking at where the differences across the fingers. And then we'll say, okay, this person has a Jupiter-type purpose, or this person has a Mercurial or Hermes-type purpose, depending on the pinky fingers. So we're looking at, so that's how one determines what would make me feel deeply fulfilled. It's almost like, what's calling me? Okay, what's calling me? And that's visible in your fingerprints. Who am I beyond my personality? What am I doing on the planet? And then the patterns that have less energy, you can think of it the way I talk about it. Richard doesn't talk about it like this, but this is how I talk about it. The one is like, what gives me energy or makes me feel expansive, and what contracts me, what shuts me down. Okay, Richard called life purpose, life lesson. But what shuts me down? So it shows you what triggers you. Your fingerprints show you, and if you think of it as a frequency map, okay, I sometimes use David Hawkins of Power versus Force. He talks about the various frequencies and how, levels of consciousness. You think of it like that. And what takes me down, what drops my energy and takes me to shame or judgment or anger or sadness. And your fingerprints are a precise map for showing you exactly what your issues are and how you get triggered. And if you've got a couple, it's great to use with couple sessions. But you can see what the core issues are and how the people trigger each other.
Wow. And you've done that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I have like 45 million questions, but here's a question. Our hands change over time, right? The lines change. So how fast is that reflected in the palm? Is it like, it has to be 10 years and it will change? Or like, what if you somehow like you're working really hard on a core pattern of a system or a belief that doesn't serve you, and then somehow you like make it through to the other side, will you see that reflected in the palm, or does the core stuff stay with you?
People are different. Sometimes it fades, and sometimes it'll be there almost like a reminder.
Okay. Okay.
Fingerprints never change. I mean, they can get more faint, if you're working with paper a lot or chemicals, but they try to grow back to their original pattern. It's so the fingerprints are an energetic print. Okay, so that's one. But as you say, the lines, children's hands change all the time. Until about age 20, they're just like the personality. As the personalities morphing and changing, so the hands are changing a lot. And they actually, the lines often reflect the issues of the parents. If the parents are fighting, you might see a line related to that in the child's hand. Okay. Huh. Sometimes if gift markers show up in a child's hand, usually it's related to the parents. It's kind of it's a mirror. Your hands are. I like to say your hands are mirrors, and they're showing your inner psyche and what's things that are happening and issues that are recurring, and they'll grow in and out. But they are fluid, and that's a good question you ask about, because, for example, the gift markings, Richard developed a way of identifying certain markers, which he called gift markings. And I'm not too happy with that whole thing, because a lot of highly talented people don't have gift markings. Okay.
I'm sorry.
But if they're there, it's like if you think about it as a poem written about you. Okay. If just because there isn't a gift marker, doesn't mean that person doesn't have that particular talent. But if you do have the gift marker, then it's really you've got to take that needs to be in your life.
So they're sort of like the energetic blueprint that maybe before we incarnate is kind of like the mat, right? And then that's sort of, they're reflected physically in our hands.
Yeah. So if you think of it, there's the energetic blueprint, and that's what makes me feel deeply fulfilled, or the energy. Who am I beyond this lifetime? Okay. What am I doing here? Okay. And I like to use a tree analogy of, what calls me towards the light, or, what switches me on or whatever. And then the roots are, what work am I doing? And it's so you can think of it as two parts of the same thing. What calls me in one direction and what pulls me in the opposite direction to do the work. And that's often to digest what hasn't been digested in the family system. Okay. So it's like undigested stuff. So you can think of it also, I've spent the last 5 years studying with Thomas Hübl. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a modern mystic, and he works a lot with collective trauma and healing his work is all about healing the Holocaust. And this is all about the whole thing that what we need to do is presence all the collective trauma that we inherited and that we pass on. If you think about the Native Americans in the U.S., the Europeans that came in had been traumatized, by the Romans or by the Anglo-Saxons who moved into, or the supposed potato famine in Ireland, where there was, which was basically genocide. All those people moved off into the US and then traumatized the locals. So it gets perpetuated,
right.
or
I see.
Everything gets perpetuated. I mean, we're getting really heavy here now, but those issues, okay, it's a way of us growing and developing and going down and freeing our energy from those deeper frequencies and bringing them up. So my work is very much in how can we use fingerprints for that deeper stuff. But you can look at it from a very superficial level as what's my, what are those core things that make me feel fulfilled and that trigger me. Or you can take it right down to deep trauma. Psychological stuff.
Wow. So kind of, I mean, that's definitely deep, because you're not just talking about the individual, you're talking about the individual's place in a larger system related to their family karma, related to cultural, karma or trauma, or, so a societal aspect.
The human, right, the human tree. So you can think of it as you're working on 3 trees at the same time: your own acorn or oak tree, your family system, and then the human family. What am I doing on the planet to shift humanity forward?
That's
you can
beautiful.
look at it all, and they're all interrelated.
Wow, that's amazing.
And you can think of it also in terms of frequency, like how can I, if my family sometimes the family put a cement floor in the basement, not to go deeper. Oh, we're going to keep it light. We're going to stay playful. We're going to, we're not going to do anger. We're going to just stay that level, okay?
Right.
Or else they do anger very well, but they don't go deeper. They're not willing to go down into sadness or shame. Okay, so it's like to look, where is the concrete floor that the family's put in, and sometimes it's your work to smash those floors and go deeper.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. Celine, your face. Sorry.
I know, because I'm like, because what it's bringing up for me is all the different systems that I study or I think about, like, in terms of esoteric healing and the fields, and then acupuncture and, ancestral trauma. And it's all, of course, it's all in the hand, it sort of feels like a perfect mesh of all systems into one. And it's just like a little mind blowing. That's why my face is the way it is.
Yeah.
Richard, how did he figure this out? What did he study?
Okay, so I told you about him having a degree in literature, classical literature. Okay, and he then one day a palmistry book sort of landed in front of him in a bookshop, and it was Benham. There was from about 100 years ago, who wrote a book on also looking at it from the mythological and the length of fingers and stuff like that. And he used to walk around with that. And then Richard he really is the genius behind the system, and was very, very thorough and looked at what worked and what didn't work. And he threw out 90% of the hand reading myths.
Wow.
And developed a system. And then one day he was in a medical library. I think it was in the late 70s, and sitting there trying to make sense of fingerprints and what various medical papers about fingerprints. And it was almost like a download. The fingerprint, that the fingerprints are an energetic map, and you can use the pattern intensity and then work it according to the mythology, the Greek mythology, the same as you do with the personality map. And the whole system kind of like dropped into him. And that was, wow, I think that's 40 or 50 years ago now. And it's really proven to be extremely useful to people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that he had a degree in literature, because I feel like that, he's so well versed in just symbols, and looking at the world like non-materially and more from a symbolic perspective, and so it seemed like that kind of was the groundwork he needed in order to start to interpret this on that kind of level. It's really fascinating.
Exactly, because it's like the hand's the oldest literature in the world. Before we had books or before we had rocks to like carve little messages in, probably we were all trying to figure out what the lines were on our hands. And him studying poetry, and sometimes you read a poem hundreds of times before you figure it out. And some poems you figure out immediately, and some poems you don't quite figure out. And it's the same with hands. Some people's hands, you can immediately see what the issues are. And sometimes you've got to look at them and look at them and look at them.
Wow.
Some people have a novel, or a couple of volumes of information, and other people, it's quite cut and dried and straightforward.
That's beautiful. So just for my own edification again, and maybe for some other people, you gave us so much wonderful information. So in terms of just because you had said basically with the hands, there are two systems. There's the fingerprints, and then there's essentially the palm and the size and finger length and that kind of thing.
And the shape and where things are bending and the tips and all the rest, and
so,
the lines. And those can change. That changes enough. That's fluid. That's personality psychology, and the tips are the soul psychology.
Perfect. That's what I was curious about. So, okay.
And the one changes and is fluid. That's the personality. So if you think of it, if I just give you another analogy, imagine like a river. There's the source of the river. That's constant. Okay? And then there are the banks of the river, which change over time and can change in an instant. If there's a flash flood, the river can change and jump courses. Or you can put a canal in the river. That's like going to the army. You get the canal put into the river.
Right.
So personality is like the banks of the river. Okay, and the water going through is like the soul psychology. So it's the constant source, and that you can use as sluice gates. So you can shut down the water, or you can open up the water. Okay. That's the energy running through the system, okay? But that needs to work through something, and that's the personality, or the banks of the river, okay? So your personality, the energy comes in, and it's the constant stream, okay, of what's calling you, but it needs to work through whatever's there, and that's your personality, and that
right.
often habits that you picked up from your family and various other things affect that. But even though the banks are like hard, you think that that is the structure and the waters shift, more fluid, the personality is more changeable. And it changes over time and it can change in a flash.
Yes.
Okay. And so actually personality is quite fluid, and it's the constant source of your energetic print that doesn't change. Your fingerprints don't change.
That's a great analogy. Very helpful.
Yeah.
Wow. Celine?
Do like your toes also have this on your feet?
Yeah, I actually started a couple of years ago. I thought I'm going to also record people's feet.
That's a great question.
Because you do sometimes get a whirl-like pattern. Apparently Buddha had like a whirl on his feet. And when people were walking around barefoot, they probably studied each other's feet.
Yeah, true.
And but it's because you've got so much dead skin on the feet.
Yeah.
If you make prints, like ink sheet prints, it's such a pain to try and get that ink off the feet.
That's true.
I eventually gave up, but probably they mean something. But
yeah,
I think it's more related to grounding. A lot of that,
yeah.
Or maybe, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, the only thing people notice is sometimes people have got a whirl on the foot and sometimes they don't. And so my interpretation would be it's related to being a teacher of grounding or of being here. Whereas the others, we're like pulling ourselves up, and we've inherited fears and inherited stuff that actually ungrounds us. And then we start thinking, and trying to, instead of being fully embodied. So you can think of fingerprints as a tool for helping us to become more embodied.
Oh, Jer, you probably love that. You love being in your body.
I do. It's important. I mean, I'm a very
very
person,
good at
so
yeah.
That was a huge focus for me the last few years.
Me too. I think that's the work we need to do now.
To be in the body.
Well,
when is your birthday?
My birthday?
Yeah.
7th of January.
You're a Capricorn? Well, happy belated birthday.
Yes.
Thank you. I thought I didn't know anyone who had the same birthday as me. But then the guy who wrote The Addams Family, that black humor.
Well, it's very
company.
Capricorn-y.
That is very Capricorn. Oh, wow. Yeah.
But then I don't know if you've heard of Findhorn at all. And, that's a spiritual community in the north of Scotland. And one of the founders was also the 7th of January. And so I not since lockdown, but before then, I used to go there to do a workshop sometimes twice a year, sometimes once a year on life purpose.
Do you do workshops?
Yeah, and I teach it online, workshops, and now a weekend workshop, which is called the Purpose Wheel, and like what sticks the wheel and how to get the wheel moving again.
Huh.
I mean, you've done so many cool things.
Been on the planet a lot long. Past my sell-by date, maybe.
Jer, do you have anything? Do you have anything you want to ask?
Well, I was going to say, if people are interested in learning more about hand analysis, would you recommend any books or resources that they could kind of dive into?
Absolutely. I would certainly recommend Richard's book, Life Prints.
Okay. Great.
And he offers courses, and I used to teach his courses, but now I like to just explain it in a slightly differently. I like to explain it in terms of frequencies and stuff like that, and bringing in Thomas Hübel's work. So I teach it slightly differently to him, and I also offer courses online.
And you have your own website?
Yeah.
Okay, great. We'll link that for sure for people so they can check it out. And they can contact you through that too if they're curious about getting a reading?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
great.
So they can explore, just look at all the various, there are different people doing this, and they can look around and see who resonates with them the most. You know, look at Richard's work. I mean, he's the genius behind this system. Now, I'm just bringing in my psychological training and putting it into more, I would say I'm putting it more into the collective trauma perspective.
That's very powerful.
Because it relates back for me to my training and you know, I kept torturing myself recently about, look at climate change and what are we doing about climate change? And I've got all that training and a post-grad in that, and why am I not doing anything with it?
Right.
Why am I a hand analyst? But actually, it's about raising your consciousness, and it's about becoming more fully embodied. It's about becoming more sensitive to each other and more sensitive to nature, and just being able to be a sentient being, which is getting over the collective trauma. But it's not bad that we had that, because it's almost like we needed to go the rational route, and then now we need to go the other. It's like the tree goes down, up, down, up, down, up. Yeah, and that's what we're doing. And so, but the next step now is for us to be able to sense enough and be sensitive enough to the fragile ecosystem that we're part of.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think your work is definitely contributing and helping that, because each person that you can touch, that reverberates.
And each of us starts to wake up to our own developmental process and towards what we're touching. It's like step by step, you know. We're in this game until we all get through the. You know, it's levels. Like if you think of it like another video game, there's levels of consciousness.
Jared and I always talk about how we're leveling up. You know, hopefully.
That's what you're doing here. You know, that's what your radio show is all about. And I'm sure you're touching a lot of people and helping a lot of people with it.
Wow, thank you.
We hope so.
Best. You have such a melodic way of explaining things. It's really great.
Thank you.
You could have your own podcast too.
I had one, but I put it on the side for a bit. I was doing a podcast called Earth School and then Earth Uni, and interviewing all sorts of people, even Byron Katie. And then I started with the Thomas Hübel work, and I realized I was completely in my head. And so I did. I interviewed one of his senior trainers in his group, who really helped me. I thought, because we went to do some of this collective work, I thought I was going to a meditation week, and we ended up not being. Well, it was a meditation week, but they were doing deep healing. I thought we were meditating for the world. I'm going to become a better meditator, and we're doing global work through meditation. But actually what they were doing in groups is healing collective trauma.
Wow.
And after that, I felt I couldn't meditate as well. And then I realized that I wasn't actually in my body. I was just in my head.
Oh.
And so it was a process of actually recolonizing your body, you could say. This
That's
whole
wild.
coming out of your head and going more into, because I said, I think I picked up fear from one of the other guys that was in the room. He was shaking behind me, and I said, just hand it to me. I can deal with it or whatever. And I said, now I feel like, he says, what do you feel? And I said, I feel like tingly sensation in my neck and around on my shoulders. And he said, like fear, And he said, well, that's what aliveness feels like. I think I was such a good athlete and triathlete because I was in my head. I wasn't feeling all the,
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it's this whole embodiment thing is a big deal at the moment. I think you're on the right track with that, Jeremiah. I'd like to hear your adventures in embodiment.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I talk about it a lot in the podcast, but I mean, it's funny too. We're talking about embodiment, and like your hands are such a big part of your body. But yeah, I think it all comes back to meditating for me, at least when I started my meditation practice 7-8 years ago. Part of the reason I actually started the meditation practice was because at the time I was working at a job where this has never happened to me before, but speaking of the body, I had a physical experience of stress. Like literally, I broke out in rashes around my second chakra of all places, and
Wow.
that had never happened to me before. I'd never had stress literally manifest physically like that. So I started, and at the same time, ironically, the place I was working at was offering meditation classes. So I started
It's amazing.
doing that, and the meditation, interestingly, as someone who's very airy, and studied philosophy, and my father's a rabbi, so there's like a lot of like heady kind of, I'm Jewish, so there's a lot of like Jews tend to be heady people, where we emphasize the intellect and reading, and we're the the people of the book and all that stuff. So it's generationally also a thing. But as I started meditating, I had some experiences where not myself, but a couple of people around me or acquaintances, I had experience of people who I started tapping into higher frequencies. But the danger of that is if you tap into higher frequencies and you forget that you're in a human body, you can really just fly away. So that's kind of, I had a couple of experiences where other people were experiencing that, and it was a real like warning, I felt, for me to stay in my body. And around that time, I think Celine and I did an episode with this person, Abdi Asadi, who talks about embodiment all the time. And so, yeah. And he talks about how, a lot of people meditate, but like you were saying, Jena, there's a tendency sometimes when you meditate to just be in your head. And it's really something where to be more in touch with your body, you kind of transcend the head and the body, but like the path is through the body, not through the head.
Otherwise, it becomes a spiritual bypass. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what it's been for me. And Actually, I got hit by a car the day that I had a reading with this guy, Abdi, which I felt was like a very clear indication, like, stay in your body. You know,
So intense.
luckily nothing serious happened. It could have, who knows what could have happened. But
sure, that's amazing.
It was a very clear indication of, just make sure to stay in your body. And at the time I was actually, because it was the same day of this reading, I was like, stay in your body, stay in your body. So I feel like I wasn't in my head. It was just like a little, you're here.
Click.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So it's funny too, you talk about the tree analogy. Just to go back to that, is I think of that tree analogy all the time. I think it also relates to yoga. If you do yoga, in order to do a lot of poses in yoga, particularly standing poses, you can't really accomplish a yoga pose unless you're fully anchored and grounded. And a lot of times, my past yoga teacher, who I love, would always say that, if a lot of people are always leading with their head, and the reality is like you have to be on the ground first, and then you can expand out and raise yourself up and open, your crown chakra and that kind of stuff. But it has to start from a grounded place. So
I think it was Carl Jung who said no tree can grow up to heaven unless its roots go right down to hell. So.
Wow.
I mean, that's
there you
amazing.
Go. There you go. Yeah.
It's so wild too for me right now. I'm on my computer and Bashar just started playing.
Just out of nowhere?
Out of nowhere. That's so wild. Bashar is, do you know who Bashar is? It's like my favorite alien. I talk about him all the time. But that was so weird. That was so weird. Anyway. The tree thing is interesting because I've been making an effort for this month to meditate every day. And in my meditations, I've been having this vision of being here. And then I have roots that go all the way down into the earth. But then I also expand all the way up. And I'm right in the middle of it. And I got to tell you, it's been, talk about being in your body and grounded. It's pretty rad. So.
Fabulous.
Yeah, I know. That's my story.
So if you want to go more mental, then you can take it into those frequencies. And, if you think of the tree going down deeper and deeper into deeper frequencies of different feeling states, because we don't want to do that. We don't want to do all that hard stuff work, But if you think about the stuck energy in the family system as like gold nuggets or coal or oil or whatever. Okay. And by freeing up that energy, you can then use it in your tree, or the water. If you think about like sadness, like a lake of sadness, you can take that and make your apples on your tree.
I love that, because you're flipping kind of something that people can look at negatively into a positive thing. If you look at family trauma, you can look at it as like, oh, I'm so angry that I have like all this family trauma or ancestral trauma or anything like that. But you could also look at it as like, no, well, what if you look at it as stuck energy that's actually fertilizer?
Yeah, or a rich inheritance. Yeah,
a rich inheritance.
Or like a collaboration between you and that.
Right, a relay race.
Yeah, it's like energy that we can then free up and use and share.
Yeah,
it's this collective thing. It's not just individuals. I think we're all in this together. We're doing. That's what we're doing here now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Jena, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
This was so wonderful. I think Celine, we both learned a lot, right?
Absolutely.
I think a lot of our listeners, I'm sure, learned a lot.
Yes.
I'm probably going to reach out to you at some point soon.
I probably will too, as a follow-up.
Well, thanks for having me on your show, and congratulations to all your awesome work.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. All right, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.